It was a quiet evening on Earth, the kind of evening where the air feels still and the sounds of the day slowly fade into soft murmurs of night. In the countryside, fields of grass swayed gently as if whispering secrets to the wind. In cities, lights began to flicker on, windows glowing like warm fireflies against the growing darkness. Families were settling down, some were finishing dinner, others were curled up with books, and a few were simply staring out of their windows, lost in thought. Above all of this, the sky stretched endlessly, painted with shades of blue that deepened into velvet black. Stars were beginning to show, one by one, like tiny sparks in the distance. It began so quietly that no one noticed at first. High above the planet, far beyond the reach of the tallest mountains or the fastest aircraft, something was moving. At first it was only a shimmer, like moonlight bending strangely in one spot. Then there was another, and another. Soon, dozens of strange, glowing forms began to take shape, barely visible against the starry backdrop. To someone looking up from the ground, they might have seemed like unusually bright stars, perhaps even the start of a meteor shower. But these lights did not streak across the sky like falling stars. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, steady, controlled, almost careful. In a small coastal town, an old man sitting on his porch noticed them first. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, not in fear but in curiosity. "That's odd," he murmured to himself. "Those stars are moving." In a city far away, a group of friends standing on a rooftop saw them too. One of them pointed up, laughing at first, saying it must be some kind of new drone show. But as the lights grew larger, the laughter faded, replaced by quiet stares. What no one on Earth could see was that these were not natural lights at all. They were ships massive in size, yet so far away that their true forms were hidden by distance. Their surfaces reflected the faint glow of nearby stars, making them blend into the darkness like shadows in water. These ships belonged to travelers, from far beyond the known maps of the galaxy, beings who had crossed unthinkable distances to reach this small blue world. Inside the largest of these ships, the atmosphere was nothing like Earth's peaceful night. It was cold, metallic, filled with the faint hum of machinery and the quiet murmur of alien voices. The beings who commanded these vessels were not here out of curiosity or kindness. Their arrival was calculated, their purpose clear among themselves: to show their presence, to make their strength known, and to deliver a warning to the humans below. In their long history, they had encountered many worlds, many species. Some had resisted, most had surrendered. But in their records, Earth was still a blank space, a planet with life but no formal contact. That was about to change. As the ships settled into position above the atmosphere, they remained hidden to the naked eye, still too far to be seen clearly by most. Yet their instruments were already scanning Earth, mapping continents, tracing coastlines, measuring cities, and reading signals from communication towers. The planet's life signs, human, animal, plant, all lit up in streams of alien data in their minds. This was simply preparation. To them, humans were another species to be warned, tested, and controlled. But they had miscalculated one thing. They assumed their presence was still a secret. They didn't know that far below, in places most people would never see, there were already quiet eyes watching them. In deep hidden command centers, buried beneath mountains, in satellites drifting high above the clouds, and in ships patrolling the world's oceans, humanity had noticed long before the lights in the sky became visible to the public. Strange patterns had been detected, signals that didn't match any known aircraft or satellite. Energy readings too unusual to be natural. People trained for these moments were already at work, speaking in calm, low voices, tracking every movement of the unknown objects. For the rest of the world, the night remained almost peaceful. Some people kept watching the lights, wondering if they would fade or grow brighter. Social media filled with pictures and videos, each one showing faint glowing dots above the horizon. Most assumed it was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a rare alignment of planets or an unusual reflection of sunlight from distant satellites. A few began to suspect otherwise, but their voices were lost in the noise of theories and guesses. In one small apartment on the edge of a city, a young boy sat by the window, his chin resting on his hands as he stared at the strange lights. His grandmother, sitting beside him, told him it was probably nothing to worry about, just something beautiful to watch. "The sky has many secrets," she said softly, "but not all of them are dangerous." The boy nodded, though he kept his eyes fixed on the glowing shapes, as if they might tell him a story if he looked long enough. Back in the alien fleet, preparations continued. The lead commander studied Earth's surface with a kind of detached curiosity. To him, this was a small, fragile world, rich in resources but lacking the unity or strength to resist. His plan was simple: arrive quietly, make their power known, and give the humans a choice: surrender peacefully, or face consequences. To him, it was the same speech he had given to dozens of other worlds, but even now, as the fleet hung silently in orbit, there was an undercurrent of something the aliens could not yet sense. Humanity had a long memory, one filled with struggles, survival, and unexpected strength. They had faced challenges from nature, from each other, and from the vast unknown, and they had learned to endure. The humans watching from the ground didn't yet know what these lights meant, but somewhere deep inside, there was no fear strong enough to make them bow without question. And so, the night continued. The ships waited, the world turned beneath them, and in the stillness between stars and earth, two very different kinds of silence existed, one heavy with expectation, the other filled with quiet, unseen preparation. The aliens believed they had arrived unnoticed, ready to make their move. The humans, watching quietly from the shadows, knew the truth. This was only the beginning, and when the first word was spoken between the two, it would decide much more than the fate of a single night. The lights above the horizon shifted slightly, forming patterns too perfect to be random. On the ground, a few people gasped, pointing at the new shapes in the sky. In control rooms hidden from public eyes, someone marked the change and gave a calm instruction: stay on them. The tension was invisible to most, but for those who understood, the night sky no longer felt so peaceful. It was a quiet evening on Earth when the strange signal first appeared. At first, most people didn't notice it. The sound was faint, a pattern of soft pulses and hums, coming from far beyond the stars. A few amateur radio enthusiasts picked it up, and at first they thought it was just interference or a glitch in their systems. But as the night went on, more people began to report hearing the same pattern. Soon, scientists confirmed that this was no natural signal. It was structured, deliberate, and coming from a part of space where no human technology had ever been sent. News spread slowly at first, as if the world wasn't quite ready to accept it. People wondered what it could mean. Some thought it was a friendly greeting from far away. Others felt a strange unease in their hearts, as if this message wasn't just a hello but a warning. In research centers, powerful computers worked day and night to decode the meaning. The signal repeated every 2 hours, and each time it played, more and more details became clear. It was not random, it was language. When the first words were finally translated, the message was simple, but unsettling: prepare yourselves, we are coming. No name, no reason, just that. Around the world, people reacted in different ways. Some were excited, believing that this was the moment humanity would finally meet intelligent life from beyond Earth. Others were afraid, remembering all the stories and movies where such arrivals did not end well. Governments held emergency meetings behind closed doors. Scientists spoke carefully in press conferences, telling people to stay calm. But in living rooms, coffee shops, and street corners, the conversation was anything but calm. Some people stayed up all night looking at the stars, wondering which one the message had come from. Others went about their daily lives, pretending nothing had changed, even though deep down, they knew the world was now different. News channels showed endless debates, some claiming that we should send a reply, others warning that any response could be dangerous. The arguments went in circles, but the signal kept coming, never changing its words, only repeating them over and over. In one small town, far from big cities, a group of people gathered in a community hall. They were farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, and students. They sat in a circle, talking about the message. Most of them had never met a scientist in person, but they didn't need a degree to understand that something big was about to happen. One old man, who had spent his life working with radios, listened quietly before speaking. He said that the tone of the signal felt heavy, as if the one sending it didn't want to talk, but to declare something. His words made the room fall silent. Meanwhile, in hidden facilities, the best minds on Earth were working to trace the signal's origin. They found it was coming from a moving source, not a fixed planet. That meant it was a ship and it was heading toward Earth. The calculations showed it was still far away, but getting closer every day. This changed the conversation. It was no longer just about the meaning of the message, but about time. How long did we have before they arrived? Weeks passed, and the signal never stopped. Every 2 hours it was there, like the ticking of a clock. People began to notice strange changes in themselves. Some felt more connected to each other, as if the shared experience was pulling humanity closer. Others grew more distant, choosing to isolate themselves, unsure of what the future would bring. In schools, children asked their teachers if the visitors would be friendly. Some teachers smiled and said they hoped so, but inside, they carried the same uncertainty as everyone else. Parents tucked their children into bed at night, whispering promises that they would keep them safe, even though they didn't know what safe would mean in the days to come. As the weeks turned into months, more details were gathered. Ship, if that's what it was enormous. Bigger than any human-made craft by far. It moved steadily, never speeding up, never slowing down. Whoever was on board had a purpose, and that purpose did not seem to require haste. Scientists began to detect smaller signals between the main transmissions, almost like whispers between the stars. These were harder to decode, but when they managed to understand parts of them, they found something that chilled them. The senders were not asking for peace. They were making demands. Still, no one on Earth could agree on what to do. Some leaders pushed for building defenses, preparing for the worst. Others argued that doing so would send the wrong message, that humanity was aggressive. And then there were those who believed that no matter what humans did, the visitors' plans were already set. Late one night, a young researcher stayed in the lab after everyone else had gone home. She listened to the signal again and again, letting the sound wash over her. She began to notice something odd in the pattern, something that others had missed. It wasn't just a command, it had a rhythm, almost like music. For a moment, she imagined that maybe the senders were trying to speak in a way that went beyond words, something deeper. She wondered if humanity had been too quick to assume the worst. But before she could explore the thought further, the signal cut out. It was the first time in months that it had stopped. Across the world, those who were listening felt a sudden emptiness, like the silence after a storm. No one knew what it meant. Some thought they had finally gone away. Others believed this was only the beginning, and that the next message would be different. The world waited. The skies were quiet. And somewhere, far out in the darkness, something was moving closer. The pause in the signal felt like a held breath, a moment before the next step. Whatever came next would change everything, and the people of Earth could only hope that when the second message arrived, it would be something they could understand, and something they could survive. Asterisk. For days, the world held its breath. The strange signal had stopped without warning, and the silence felt heavier than the words that had come before it. People turned on their radios, checked their phones, and stared at the night sky, waiting for that familiar pattern of sound to return, but nothing came. It was as if the voice from the stars had stepped back, watching to see what humanity would do next. In government buildings and underground bunkers, leaders sat around long tables, staring at each other across stacks of papers and glowing screens. Every country had its own opinion on what should be done. Some wanted to send a clear warning back to tell whoever was coming that Earth was not defenseless. Others believed the only hope was to show peace, to answer with kindness in the hope it would be returned. But for the first time in history, everyone understood that this decision wasn't just for one nation, it was for the entire planet. The debates lasted for hours, then days. Experts from every field spoke: scientists, military commanders, linguists, historians, even artists and poets. They argued over every possibility. Could the visitors be friendly but cautious? Could their "prepare yourselves" message have been misunderstood? Or was it exactly what it sounded like, a statement of power, a warning before they arrived? Finally, it was decided that Earth would answer. But the answer would not be rushed. It would be the most important message humans had ever sent into the void. This was not just about words. It was about showing who we were, our strength, our unity, our hope. Around the world, people began to contribute. Musicians offered melodies that could be sent along with the words, believing that music could speak across any language. Engineers built the most powerful transmitters in history, capable of sending a signal deep into space. Artists and filmmakers provided images and sounds that told the story of humanity, the beauty of oceans and mountains, the laughter of children, the rhythm of footsteps in crowded cities, the quiet of a candle in the dark. Farmers sent pictures of their harvests. Astronauts shared views of Earth from above. Scientists offered maps of the stars as a sign of shared knowledge. The work was exhausting, but it brought people together in ways they hadn't imagined possible. Rivals worked side by side. People from different cultures and beliefs sat in the same rooms, looking at the same screens, all driven by the same thought: this is who we are. This is what we stand for. While the message was being prepared, there was still fear. Ordinary people worried about their families, their futures. Some built shelters, just in case. Others tried to live normally, not wanting fear to take away Their dazed children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. What if they don't like our message? What if they don't want to be friends? The only answer anyone could give was, "We'll do our best." The chosen moment came on a clear night. Around the world, people gathered in public squares, on rooftops, by beaches and lakes, to be part of it. Huge screens showed a countdown. In the final seconds, the signal was sent. It began with a simple greeting in dozens of Earth's languages, followed by a translation of the words into a universal pattern scientists believed could be understood by any intelligent mind. Then came the music, a rising swell of instruments and voices, carrying the sound of hope into the stars. After that, images and sounds flowed like a river, forests swaying in the wind, waves breaking on the shore, children playing, birds taking flight, the laughter of friends sharing food, the silence of deep space from the view of a satellite. Message ended with one clear sentence, repeated 3 times. "We wish to live in peace, but we will protect our home." When it was done, there was nothing left but waiting. The silence after the transmission felt even heavier than before. But this time, it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of having spoken your truth, of knowing that you had done what you could. Days passed. The signal from space did not return. Some began to wonder if it had even been heard. But late one evening, when most of the world was asleep, a reply came. It was not like the first message. This one was slower, almost hesitant. The scientists who heard it first exchanged uneasy looks. It was not a simple greeting. The translation took hours, but when it was ready, the words were broadcast across every screen on the planet. "We have heard you. We did not expect your kind to speak with such unity. We are still coming." The last part sent a shiver through everyone who heard it. It was not a promise of peace. It was not a declaration of war. It was something in between. But buried in the tone of the message, experts thought they could hear a shift, as if the visitors were now curious, maybe even cautious. And so humanity waited again. But this time they waited differently. The answer had changed something. People felt a quiet strength in knowing they had spoken together as one. They didn't know what would happen when the ships arrived, but they knew they would face it together, not as strangers from different lands, but as one people, from one Earth, with one voice. Somewhere out there, in the cold distance between the stars, the visitors were still on their way. And down here, under the fragile blue sky, humanity stood ready, hearts steady, waiting for the day they would look into the eyes of those who had sent that first message, and see what came next. The weeks after the last message felt endless. Every sunrise brought the same question: when will they come? People still went to work, still cooked dinner, still walked in parks, but there was a quiet tension in the air. Conversations that used to be about weather or sports now circled back to the same topic. What do you think they'll do? Governments stayed in constant contact, sharing updates, scanning the skies with every telescope and satellite they had. Scientists didn't sleep much. They were always watching, always calculating. Then, one morning, a strange reading appeared on several observatories at once, a group of objects moving together, just outside the edge of our solar system. They were massive, silent, and coming closer. At first, the world reacted with fear, but after the shock faded, a strange calm settled in. Everyone knew this moment would come. This time, there was no surprise, only the quiet knowledge that what had been predicted was finally happening. The ships didn't come straight to Earth. They stopped near the outer planets, and for several days, they didn't move. No weapons fired, no messages sent, just silence. People called it the long stare, as if the visitors were simply watching us. Then, without warning, a single ship broke away from the rest and headed directly toward Earth. It was enormous, larger than the biggest cities, yet it moved with a slow, careful grace. When it entered Earth's orbit, something unexpected happened. Instead of sending a threat or landing an army, the visitor sent a short signal. It was just 3 words: prepare for test. No one knew what it meant. Was it a challenge, an examination, a warning? Every language struggled to translate it exactly, but the meaning was always the same. Something was about to happen, and they would be watching. Within hours, the entire planet was connected in a way it had never been before. Scientists from every country gathered in a global command center, their screens glowing with data. Leaders spoke directly to their people, promising to face whatever was coming with courage and unity. The test began the next morning, without any visible machines or weapons. Changes started happening all over the world. In one city, the power went out completely, forcing people to find other ways to communicate and help each other. In another place, huge blocks of ice suddenly appeared in the middle of a desert, melting into water that flooded streets and homes. In coastal towns, strange tides rose and fell at unnatural speeds. It wasn't an attack, it was something else. Almost like they were changing the rules of nature to see how humans would respond. At first, panic broke out in some places. People rushed to stores, hoarded supplies, and tried to protect themselves. But something remarkable also began to happen. In neighborhoods where strangers barely spoke before, people started working together. They shared food, helped carry water, and comforted the frightened. Rescue teams formed instantly, not just from governments, but from ordinary citizens. In one mountain village, a sudden snowstorm buried homes under meters of snow. With no helicopters able to reach them, nearby towns sent volunteers on foot, carrying shovels and blankets. In a faraway island nation, where the sea level rose dangerously overnight, fishermen used their boats to rescue families trapped in their homes. Everywhere, the test seemed to be the same: create a problem, what, how humans handle it. And everywhere, the results surprised even ourselves. By the second week, it was clear the visitors weren't looking for war, they weren't stealing resources, they were watching how we treated each other when the world changed in unexpected ways. One of the strangest tests happened in a crowded city center. Without warning, every electronic device stopped working: phones, traffic lights, even elevators froze. For hours, the city moved without technology. At first, there was confusion. But instead of chaos, something else took over. People directed traffic by hand, shared paper maps, and used chalk to leave messages on walls. Neighbors who had never met before knocked on each other's doors to check if everyone was safe. By nightfall, the power returned, but something stayed behind: the memory that humans could still function without the machines they thought they couldn't live without. As days passed, some began to believe the test was less about survival, and more about character. It was about whether humans could put aside differences when it truly mattered. Of course, not every place passed perfectly. There were moments of selfishness, moments of fear, but those moments were outnumbered by acts of kindness so unexpected and powerful that they made headlines across the world. One evening, the visitors sent another message. This one was longer, but still simple enough for anyone to understand. We have seen strength, we have seen weakness, we have seen you choose. No one knew if that meant the test was over. But soon after, the strange environmental changes began to fade. The ice vanished from deserts, the tides returned to normal, the skies cleared. For 3 days, the great ship stayed in orbit, silent again. Then, as slowly as it had arrived, it began to move away, joining the others far beyond the moon. People stood outside at night, staring up, wondering what decision had been made about them. The world felt different, not because of what the visitors had done, but because of what humanity had discovered about itself. When the ships finally left our skies, they didn't leave a final message. No promise to return, no threat, no farewell. Just the emptiness of the stars. And yet, that silence didn't feel like before. It wasn't heavy with fear. It felt more like a door that had closed quietly, leaving us with the knowledge that someone, somewhere, had seen who we were when tested. Life slowly returned to normal, but the memory stayed. People remembered the days when the world acted as one. And deep down, everyone knew. The test might have been over for now, but the real challenge was keeping that unity without waiting for the stars to test us again. The night it happened, the sky looked the same as always. Stars blinked in their usual quiet way. The moon hung in its calm silver place, and the world below moved with the usual rhythm of life. But somewhere far beyond what our eyes could see, something was watching. It didn't start with a loud announcement. There was no giant beam of light or strange explosion. It began with a small signal, so faint that only the most powerful telescopes noticed it. Astronomers thought it was just another radio wave from a distant galaxy until the pattern repeated. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. When scientists decoded it, the message was short and clear. We wish to share a lesson. No one knew what that meant. A lesson in what? Technology, peace, war. Still, it was enough to send waves of curiosity and fear through the entire planet. People talked about it in cafes, on buses, at family dinners. News stations ran the story all day, and social media filled with endless theories. Some people hoped it meant something good. Others feared it was a warning. Days passed, then weeks. The message didn't come again until one night. The stars changed. At first it was just a shimmer, like a heat wave rippling across the sky. Then the stars began to move. Slowly, deliberately, they formed a shape. It was not a spaceship. It was more like a giant curtain opening in the dark, revealing something behind it. And behind it was another sky. But this one was different. The stars were brighter, closer, and moving in patterns that didn't exist in our part of the universe. People stared up, confused and amazed, as if the universe had just grown bigger in an instant. Then came the voice. It wasn't a sound that entered through ears, it was something that settled directly into the mind. Every person on Earth heard the same words in their own language. You are small in size, but not in importance. We will show you why. The next moment was impossible to explain. In an instant, every person on Earth saw something that wasn't in front of them. It was like a dream, but sharper and more real. They were standing in a place with no ground, no air, only a vast sea of stars stretching in all directions. But they weren't floating, they were simply there, and they weren't alone. Shapes of light moved all around beings without clear faces, without bodies, just glowing patterns that shifted like living constellations. Somehow, you could feel them, looking at you, even though they had no eyes. One of the lights came closer, speaking without a mouth. You believe your world is all there is, but you are part of something greater. We have seen many like you, and many who failed. Images appeared in the sky around them, worlds of green and blue, worlds covered in metal, worlds burning in fire. Some thrived, filled with life and cooperation, others collapsed into ruin, empty and silent. The light being continued. Every world faces a choice, to grow together or to fall apart. We have watched yours, you are at the edge. Then the vision shifted again. Now everyone was seeing Earth, floating alone in space, but it didn't look like it did from satellites. It looked fragile, like a single glowing seed in the middle of a vast darkness. The being's voice grew softer. You fight over lines you cannot see from here. You waste the gifts your home gives you, yet you also love, create, and protect. We have come because your time is short, and your choice will decide more than you know. Suddenly, the stars changed into something else, entirely a memory of Earth's greatest moments. People helping each other in disasters, children laughing together without caring about language or race, strangers risking their lives for someone they had never met. Then came the darker images: wars, destruction, cruelty. The voice said, "Every action is a seed. Enough seeds of kindness will grow into a forest that can protect you. Enough seeds of hate will burn that forest down." The light beings didn't lecture or threaten. They simply showed over and over. They gave visions of what could happen, depending on the choices humanity made. In one future, cities stood tall and green, powered by clean energy, with people working side by side to explore the stars. In another, the skies were black with smoke, oceans empty of life and silence, covering the ruins of once busy streets. And then, they asked a single question: which world will you build? When the vision ended, everyone found themselves back on Earth, in the exact place they had been before. But the stars in the sky looked different now. They seemed closer, brighter, as if they had leaned in to hear the answer. For days, the world felt quieter, not out of fear, but reflection. People talked less about politics and more about possibilities. Strangers treated each other with unusual patience. News stories focused not on what had gone wrong, but on what could be made right. Wasn't magic. The lesson hadn't erased all problems. There were still arguments, still selfish acts, but something had shifted. People began to notice things they had ignored before: the kindness of a neighbor, the beauty of a morning sky, the waste of letting food rot while others went hungry. Schools taught not just history and science, but the lesson among the stars. Governments, for a time at least, worked together on projects that crossed borders. And while no one knew if the light beings were still watching, many acted as if they were. Years passed, life went on, but every now and then, when the night sky was clear, people would stop and look up, half expecting the stars to move again. They didn't nod in the same way, but sometimes, just sometimes, a single star would seem to flicker more brightly than the rest, as if winking. And in those moments the words returned to their minds. Which world will you build? It was never a command, it was always a choice. And that was the greatest lesson the stars had given, that the future wasn't something that simply happened. It was something we created, together, every single day.